Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 4177 or 78. I'm not really sure. Today's date is July 27, 2026. It's been almost like a morning at 9:11 a.m. Alright, I am kind of like not really feeling really good. Why? Last night I haven't really slept properly. Basically, I slept at almost like maybe like 1 a.m. and I wake up at 5:30 a.m. Okay, so I kind of like somehow I sleep just 4.5 an hour. Why I did wake up so early? I don't know. I just wake up and then I went to kind of like a number two, and then after that I was kind of like thinking that why the fuck I should supposed to wake up so early, and then I can't able to sleep, so I decided that let's do a work. So I was kind of like doing my work. So at almost like a 5:30 I kind of like starting doing my work, 5:30 to almost like a 6:30, and at almost like a 7 a.m I kind of like feel little bit of dizzy while kind of like doing my work. I was like so I decided that I just went to sleep. So at 7 a.m I went to sleep again, and then at almost like a 8 a.m, almost like a 1 hour of sleep I took. And right now I just did the brush. I'm right here. So it's not really that my sleep is like not completed. I slept probably almost like a 5.5 an hour, yeah, but still it's not good. Okay, my sleep is kind of like a very much essential, and if I'm not really sleep that much well, then the rest of the function is not properly done. Whatever. Let's talk about the topic. Yeah. All right. So question is, how long should artifact be? Oh, that's a really good question. Okay, so what exactly is this question, and why am I asking this question to myself? I wanted to build a such a AI that could predict the future. I wanted to build Adam. Adam is a AI that could predict the future. Okay, I know it sounds so futuristic. Okay, but it's not really futuristic. Yeah, it is possible, and it is possible. Yeah, and basically maybe I found a way to kind of like see the future, but it's not the kind of like the future that you kind of like imagine in your head. It's a kind of like a thing is that na ki from probability point of perspective we could kind of like something predict the possible future. Okay. um Before I wanted to build such a thing, I wanted to aware of all the possible consequences. So I how do I supposed to do that? By asking question to myself and giving the answer. So I went to ChatGPT. I say that I wanted to build such a AI that could predict the future, suggest me hundreds of questions. ChatGPT kind of like suggests me hundreds of questions. This is one of those questions. By the question actually in the mobile phone, but while recording I cannot do anything at all. So that's why I wrote the question in here. Okay, this is a kind of a question. By the way, this is a kind of like a book that I'm reading. Okay, most of people are kind of like thinking that okay, like this is a kind of like a topic that I wanted to talk about this thing. Okay, so basically from last couple of days I was kind of like only putting my question in here. Okay, so this is one, this cool. Okay, this kind of is only question. Okay, now basically this thing, these are the kind of like only question that I ask every single day. Okay, so if I ask this question over here, the next question should be over here, the things are not and that, right? But if I'm kind of like asking this question every single day, that means this is the kind of like first day, second day, third day, and fourth day. Okay, so that means I am kind of like writing all those questions in here. So is that means that am I not reading the book? Because if I'm reading the book, then probably I would not gonna write the question over here. I would gonna write the question maybe kind of like somewhere here or there or things like that and that. Okay, why am I kind of like writing question over here? Okay, yeah, am I not reading the book? That's a really good question. Okay, so I found a way to read the book. Okay, yeah. And I found a way to read the book means what? Like, is it kind of like you found another way to read the book? Yeah, probably. Like, basically, it worked for me. It might gonna work for you. I don't know. Okay, but let hear me out. So this is a kind of like a Principia. Okay, this is the kind of like a book by the Isaac Newton, and it is one of the difficult and one of the toughest book to understand. This is the book that you cannot understand while you just read. It does not. It does not. Okay, yeah. This is a book you need to like literally just like you need pen and paper and to imagine kind of like a things. Okay, yeah. If you can't imagine and you just started reading this book doesn't really make sense at all. This is just a piece of paper at all. Okay, yeah. If you wanted to consume this information from this book, you need to kind of like you can't read this book kind of like a bedside. No, you need a kind of like a full attention to kind of like a read and book. And even after you put all the efforts and everything, 100 out of almost like a 20% of the people might gonna understand this book by reading it. Only 20%. 80% of the people don't even understand, and those are 80% of the people are reading a book, and those will not gonna understand. Okay, I'm not even counting the people who are not reading the book. I'm counting the, like, let's just say amount of people are kind of like reading this book. From that amount of people of book, let's say 100%, in that 100% only 20% of the people will understand this book by reading. Only 20%. 80% of the people does not, and I am following that 80% of the people. Okay, I am not gonna understand this book. This is like a one of the toughest book that understand. Why is that? First of all, is that the languages are like a basically this is kind of like a language. This is kind of like English, which is in kind of like a 16th century or maybe kind of like a 15th century. These are kind of like English language. Also, another thing, you can't understand this book until and unless you knew the gravity, you knew the kind of like equation, you knew the kind of like a inverse square law and things like that. That is not. So basically this thing, if you wanted to read this book, you need to already aware of what is actually Newton, who is actually Newton, who is gravity, what is actually gravity, how the gravity work and things like that. Then and only then you could kind of like simply understand this book. Okay, yeah. If you are completely unknown regarding about who is a Newton, you might kind of like understand, okay, this is the guy who kind of like somebody the apple fall in his head and things and that, and you are that particular person guy, and you are kind of like reading this book. Fuck, you might not understand this book. Like literally, okay, yeah. Like I'm not kind of like somebody kind of like a demotivate to you, but yeah, this is kind of like one of the toughest book that's kind of like somebody like a crazy to understand. So how am I kind of like reading this book? Okay, I always knew this is kind of like a book is kind of like a very difficult to understand. So what I'm doing, I am kind of like using a ChatGPT to understand the concept. Okay, let me tell you how it actually happened. So basically right now I am at the kind of like section number 9. Okay, yeah. So basically what I do is that I kind of like took a photo. This is the kind of like a photo number 1, then kind of like a photo number 2, photo number 3, photo number 4, till the kind of like till the end of this section, till the end of this particular section. Okay, let's just say this particular section has almost like maybe 7 to 8 pages. So I took a photo of 7 to 8 pages. Okay, yeah, and upload that photo in ChatGPT. Okay, by the way, I created the kind of like custom project in a ChatGPT, kind of like considered as a homework, and in that custom project I kind of like give the instruction that whatever the kind of like images that I uploaded, this is kind of like images about the book. So basically this thing kind of like explain me as much as simple as possible, so I don't have to be kind of like a write every single time as a kind of like instruction, nothing really at all. Okay, so basically is this thing, I kind of like simply take a photo of that 7 to 8 photo. Okay, and I kind of like simply upload that photo on ChatGPT custom project. Okay, and then after that, what is that is this thing that ChatGPT kind of like somebody explain me in all that thing stuff. Okay, yeah. I kind of like rearrange something differently. Rearrange means what? Like basically is this thing, I kind of like give the instruction, do not kind of like provide me all the information all at once, nothing really at all. Whatever the kind of information that you get, like whatever the images that I uploaded, you kind of like simply explain me in phase by phase, like a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5. Okay, yeah. And kind of like simply what is that happened, I kind of like give the instruction like that way, like explain me phase 1 first, as much as simple language as possible. Also give me a kind of like a relevant example so that I would understand. Also is this thing, after I kind of like somebody like read all those things, then kind of like ask me question, 2-3 questions regarding about the phase 1, that do I understand or not. and then I will kind of like give the answer regarding about the question that it asks, and basically that ChatGPT kind of like review my kind of like answer and things and that, and when I'm really confirmed that I do understand the phase 1, then move to phase 2. Okay, yeah, and same thing goes with the same phase 2, then phase 3, then phase 4, then phase 5, kind of like that. And this is why I could able to be understand the kind of like something this book. Okay, yeah. Why am I kind of like doing this thing? I am not smart enough, okay, and I cannot kind of like simply create like a visualize the kind of like something images just by reading a words. Maybe you can, I can't. Okay, so that's why I'm kind of like using ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is a kind of like a much more kind of like a explain to me in as much as simple language. Even if I don't really understand thing, I also kind of like explain in simple language or explain with the example and things like that. ChatGPT kind of like explain me much more easier and much more better way, and because of this thing, I could able to be kind of like understand this book. Okay, so this is kind of like a really helpful for me, and that's why I'm kind of like things that na ki if I kind of like simply the complete these things, I kind of like put my pen over here, and then I will kind of like simply, then I don't really need to kind of like open up the book. I open the ChatGPT and kind of like simply kind of like a learn phase by phase and things like that. And then after that, I complete the phase 1, like a phase, like basically right now I complete this section 8. Then I will kind of like today I will gonna move to the section 9. So I will kind of like took the photos, like a 7-8 photo, whatever the kind of like a section that it has, and kind of like so upload that photo in kind of like a ChatGPT, and kind of like simply I will kind of like put the pen over here. I will not gonna open the book. Okay, yeah, that book will kind of like stay here. I will kind of like open the ChatGPT and kind of like simply learn by my things. It's really good. Then I have to ask another question, that if you are kind of like learning everything by the ChatGPT, then why do you buy this book? Okay, it doesn't really make sense at all, right? Like basically it's this thing you spend almost like I spend almost like how much money? Almost like 300 rupees for this book. Okay, so why I kind of like spend that much amount of money to buy the book, and in the end you are kind of like using ChatGPT to kind of understand and things like that? That's a really good question. Okay, yeah. So let me tell you something. This is a book. Okay, yeah, and I understand something value about the book. Okay, yeah. I don't know. Am I wrong? Am I making sense or not? I don't know. I'm kind of like trying to tell you. Okay. Your answer, you like if you are kind of like thinking that if I'm kind of like in the end I'm kind of like understanding the concept by ChatGPT, then why I kind of like simply get this and buy this book. Okay. This book is always in front of me. This is the book is kind of like something always in my desk and things and that and that. Okay. Obviously I am not kind of like somebody, I'm using ChatGPT to understand the concept, but what is exactly reason for me to kind of like open the ChatGPT and understand the kind of like Newton concept? What is exactly the reason? This book, because this book is actually in front of me all the time. It always been poking me that key I should supposed to be read the book. Like basically I have to be kind of like read the book, and if I'm not read the book, then probably just like that. No. Okay, so this is a book is kind of like a remind me to read me. It kind of like somebody say this thing that key it yelling at me that key read me, and it kind of like a giving me reminder that I should supposed to be read the book. If I don't have this book, I have a ChatGPT for free. Okay, yeah, I would not gonna do this thing. Literally not. Okay, sometimes you buy the book, it's kind of like a somebody book is a kind of like a somebody forcefully to read your book. Okay, it's maybe if you are kind of like a particular person who are kind of like a read the book always and things and that, then probably you might not that particular person. You don't really feel that much kind of like some things that the book is kind of like a yelling at you to read me. No, nothing really at all. You just kind of like a read automatically. But I am not that person. I haven't really read that many books. And basically this complicated book, oh my god, I might gonna give up within a kind of like a day or two. Nothing really at all. So basically what I'm realized that na ki this existence of this book is kind of like a yelling at me to kind of like a read me. Okay, yeah, and that's why I am kind of like a reading. That's why I kind of like read that much amount of pages, like basically through the ChatGPT. But still I could like this is kind of like this much kind of like a pages that I read, and I'm kind of like proud of myself, dude, because I am not that particular person. I'm literally not that particular person to read this kind of like a very complicated book. Nothing really at all. So it kind of like a feels me kind of like a very overwhelmed or very kind of like a things. I don't know, it's not really things, but like a yeah. And also is this thing ChatGPT kind of like explain me very simple language, and I also understand things is like basically is this thing, the planets are revolve around the star is not in circular, it's a kind of like simply the elliptical path. Okay, as also the elliptical path is also kind of like oriented after some sort of years of like thousands of years, the elliptical path is kind of like a change, orientation change actually happened. Okay, and as also is this thing, most of the kind of like a planets around the solar system is a kind of like a very different, like basically in the kind of like a somebody in the school we kind of like a mention that this is the sun, this is the kind of like a multiple planets are kind of like a rotate around the orbit, but that is not reality. The reality that is not is way much different, way much different. Okay, like basically is this thing, why we have a kind of like a something that elliptical path. Okay, what exactly is this thing? Is it because of kind of like something the gravitational influence? Yes, but it's not the kind of like gravitational influence. Basically the earth is a kind of like a something the gravitationally influenced by sun and also Jupiter too, because Jupiter has a kind of like a very heavy kind of like a dense things, and it has a kind of like a so much gravitational influence that it could kind of like influence us. That's why we have a kind of like a elliptical path. Okay, it's not kind of a completely circular and things and that and that. And as also is this thing, let me tell you one thing, thus Jupiter is not also kind of like a rotate around the sun, like basically is this thing, the Jupiter is also have so much amount of gravity that it kind of like a somebody just bend the kind of like a solid sun. Like basically, like if you think that this is the kind of like a sun, this is the Jupiter, so you are thinking that the kind of like a sun is the kind of like a center and Jupiter is kind of like a revolve around the sun. No. Okay, so basically it kind of like a wobble at the center, like basically the like it called a kind of like a bicenter. Like basically is this thing, the sun is over here, the Jupiter is over here. When the kind of like a somebody Jupiter rotate, the kind of like a sun is also kind of like a rotate, and it the center is not the center of the orbit, is not the center of the circle, it is not the center of the sun, it's a kind of like a outside. Like basically let's just imagine this is a kind of like a sun, and basically the sun is a kind of like a rotate like that. Okay, yeah, rotate like that. And this is kind of like something happened is because of the kind of like a gravitational influence by the Jupiter. So basically Jupiter is also so much strong that it could kind of like somebody wobble the sun from its center. Okay, that is called kind of like a bicenter and things like that. Oh my god, this is kind of like a things that I kind of like really understand such a concept that fuck I don't really understand such thing. Like, and as also I'm really curious that how does fuck Newton knew that thing. Okay, because in that period of time telescope is not even exist. The I don't know, like basically saying right now we have kind of like so much equipments and things and that and that and that, and from that thing we could kind of like somebody barely understand the kind of like gravity, but the Newton is, oh my god, like how does he understand that? He have a kind of like a very dinky telescope, and from the telescope just barely could able to be see something. My god, like a Newton is a kind of like a guy who just like blown out my mind. Whatever. Okay, yeah, like this is what actually happened when I kind of like talk about this book. I just can't stop talk about this book. It just like I have the whole artifact kind of like take the entire thing about talking this book and things and that like I don't know, like basically what kind of like a book is adding value. Am I kind of like giving any kind of exam or things and that? No, definitely not. Okay, yeah. But what I realized that now sometimes you kind of like get the information not to understand or not to kind of like not to kind of like give the exam or give the marks or give the money or things. No. Sometimes I am kind of like consuming this information for my knowledge. Like it sounds so kind of like something that it's stupid, but I don't know. It's not stupid, but I feel really good to know about that particular stuff. Try this book. Highly recommend to you read this book, but still it's very complicated. If you are kind of like early reader, then obviously you have to use ChatGPT. Why not Gemini? Why not Anthropic? Well, basically ChatGPT is really good at writing. Oh yeah, like basically if I'm gonna say that na ki which chat model is a kind of like a really good for writing, ChatGPT is really good at writing. Anthropic is also, but ChatGPT is kind of like a much more better as compared to Anthropic, and Gemini is a kind of like a much more worse than writing. Like Gemini is kind of like a really good at kind of like generating images or video, but is not really good at kind of like somebody writing an article or writing any kind of like somebody. ChatGPT is really good at that. So use ChatGPT. Okay, it's really good, and read this book. Okay, highly recommend. It's been almost like a 19 minute, and I haven't really asked the question to myself. Okay, yeah. Should I ask? Yeah, let's just ask question. Okay, yeah. All right. So question is, how long should artifact to be long? Like what exactly is this thing? Right now I don't want it to be. Why? Because I'm really hungry, because I wake up at kind of like a 5 a.m. and I just drink the water and nothing really at all. I am so starving from inside. It's been almost like a how much, 9:30, 9:30 p.m., 9:30 a.m., and I'm really starving. I can't able to talk that much. Maybe I lose entire energy to kind of talk about this book and things and that and that. I need a kind of like a something to eat. Okay, yeah. I will gonna ask this question later. Okay. All right. This is it. I have to be end here. Thank you.